Nicole. Month after it rejected the clause. The bill, sponsored by Segun Odebumi, immunity to cover presiding officers of the legislative institutions. Now, some members of the committee agreed with him, while others opposed it. Now, currently, only the president, vice president, governors and their deputies currently enjoy immunity under Section 308 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. The immunity clause for executives has been a subject of controversy. Well, joining us to discuss this is Kach Onunoju. He is a political analyst, and of course, Richard Nwokocha, Professor of Law, Public Law, Rivers State University. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. It's trashed. Early this year, beg your pardon, it was still rejected. The question, of course, on
and what the people of the country, no, they are seeking to benefit themselves. So that's how I see it, and it's an honest expression of where we are today as a
Nigerian. Why do you think that we've descended this low, in your own words? Because you said that we have descended. Why have we gotten to this point in the life of our legislature and the leadership of the country?
You have to look at the leadership of National Assembly. This is the first leadership of National Assembly that has never been there for the Nigerian people. This leadership has been there for themselves.
The sponsor of this bill, Leo Ogo, he's the PDP, Delta State, he said that the bill intends to alter Section 308 of the 1999 Constitution. His reasons are that the immunity for
history, you will see that no member of National Assembly has so far in the past 20 years of the current democratic experiment has ever been punished or be taken to court simply for doing their job. I honestly do not know where this is coming from, but I can tell you that it takes the agreement of the leadership for things like this to occur, because the democracy to is
gather the people are, because the person who moved this motion is a member of the opposition, which seems to be, I remember when we had been pushing for certain things to be included in the Electoral Act, and of course, even the Constitution Amendment, we didn't see this kind of...
The I simply means the leadership has actually gotten all the members to go along with what is being done. That's why you saw no opposition to it from either the PDP or the APC rank of the National Assembly. It is a bill that has the blessings of leaders of National Assembly. That I posit.
But then this bill, I see that Professor Nwokocha has joined us. Let me quickly go to Professor Nwokocha. Do you think that this is what means something that needs immunity for legislation?
Now, it's perhaps this is the only thing we want to contribute to the world and the world of governance. And it's a strange one. This will be the only country that you will find that kind of crave to give immunity to Chief Justice of the country and to the leader of the legislature. It's not customary. Governance does not require immunity for those officers before you can have good governance. So it's certainly not one of the things we require now to treat in our polity. It's not now, and it's not going to be later. It's not going to be a requirement. They are seeking to take, we're already having enough problem with abuse of powers and malfeasance in governance, and their scope and their duty.
Legislature, especially this one, this particular legislature, both the upper and lower chambers, to be rubber stamp. And this is detailed for some of the legislatures in the states, if not all of them, who simply are members of the same political party with the person who's leading the state. So really, I want to ask again, if we do some responsibilities and all of these different arms of government. Professor, go ahead.
I do not think, yes. Now, by the way, the Constitution makes them independent. They are not being independent is a function of they are not willing to be independent. Those whom the Constitution made subject to them. The legislature is supervisor to the executive.
I think that we lost that connection there with Professor Wokocha. But let me
decide the fate of the executive. I can tell you that any day. Okay, hello?
Yeah, Professor, we lost you for a second.
Hello?
We lost you for a second, but let me just go back to catch Ononuju, the CCB. Mr. Ononuju, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Mr. Ogo was probably making references to the undermining the legislature. For the democracy to work proper, we'll still go to different lengths to try to undermine the democracy the way they have done. So I believe that Buhari himself should start showing good faith by signing the Electoral Act that was actually designed during the Bukola Saraki period, which he also called harassments. They've been now being returned by a legislature primarily controlled by his party and with loyalists. So I think it's a shrine that will bring benefit to the general population, not to themselves. So I think this move, yes, it may be protective based on the experience they have had to the jurisdiction that the case was brought to. I don't really think making this legislation will stop any determined adversarial federal government from pursuing the path that Buhari has pursued.
Now, I just want to go to the recent, concerns on the floor of the National Assembly by members who have opposed this bill particularly. One of them has said that, the fact that the judiciary is going to be considered to give any immunity, they're saying that it might bother to shield them from these harassments. So, but let's look at the rule of law here. The fact that we've had leaders who do not, yield to court, rulings. We've seen outright disobedience of, the courts and the statements coming from the courts. We've seen so many of them who do what they like, including Mr. President. So if this bill, for whatsoever reason, were to see the light of day, will this not be...
that the most pressing problem to return this, he is not guilty of the accusations as happened during the time of Bukola Saraki. The court will set them free. But be that as it may, there is also a need for us to protect our lawmakers who are being harassed by the executive branch. It will not stop. They could always find people in the civil society to target some legislators. They could even use the party system, since the head of the executive being the executive, from harassing members of the judiciary and the legislature who they think are not on the same page with them. Be that as it may, I see everything, every maneuver in this democracy as issues of trial and error. We're trying different things. We're looking for what we stick. Whatever it is that we stick to it, I'm sure we'll be able to work with. Okay. I think these things are not the fundamental problems that undermine the country's progress. Those problems are inherent in the behavior of the presidency, like the security situation, the idea that so that they do not stay one day longer in IDP camps. Those are the things that I think the legislature should have to, in regards to their wanting to save population that voted him into office in the first place.
All right. Professor Wokocha, thank you very much for joining us again. Apologies for the break. Mr. Ononuju has made very important points here, but I still can't move away from the fact that it's all well and good that the member of the National Assembly or a member of the National Assembly would not want to cut off his nose to spite his face if he knows that this legislation would one way or the other have to make him or her sit up or do the right thing, knowing that the Nigerian space we're in, there are too many loopholes for politicians to wiggle out of. Now, I want to bring your attention to some of the people who were opposing the idea of, giving immunity to judicial officers. And someone here said that it's really unconventional all over the world for judicial officers or presiding officers of the legislature to have immunity. It could be self-serving from the angle of morality. Also goes on to say there could be a conflict of interest if the immunity now extends to judicial officers. And that means you have to go to the judiciary to seek leave to sue the officers that are concerned in whatever issues. You are now going to apply before the judicial officers because they are, these are the courts of competent jurisdiction. There are perhaps issues of bias. And this is a senior advocate of Nigeria, Abdullahi Mohammed, saying this. So let's play this out. At what point can we as Nigerians, those of us, let's even start with the middle class who have a perfect idea of what's going on here, how do we intervene to make sure that these kinds of bills do not continue?
For their action to be responsive to problems, and then we seek to solve them while we leave the ones that really deserve and require our attention. Campaign, hold rallies to condemn it.
How do we do these things if
over these things are possible and are going on because we do not react to them in this country? Elsewhere, people make moves, people take steps that compel the next election, we return them to office whether or not you vote. So we must begin to get active as citizens. And we must do that using every means that is available to us. The campaigns are always there. The civil society organizations, I agree, need to get more active.
For being part of the conversation, and apologies for the connection issues. Well, we'll take a quick...
You will discover that the South has held power even more, much as we are not looking at things from that perspective. Olusegun Obasanjo, that I told you, in the beginning, had 8 years from 1999 to 2007. He was succeeded by President Yaradua, who was short-lived. After about 2 years to 3 years, we lost President Yaradua, and Goodluck Jonathan, another Southerner, continued until about 2015. Now, if you put this together, you will discover that the South has held on to power for an 11 or more years in the 15 years of the PDP.
What we have in this country is a campaign of deceit. People say what you cannot do. You can't give what you don't have. My dear, you can't give what you don't have. In the first place, let me say this to you, that as the campaign comes up, all you're going to hear different slogan. I will build road, I will do this, I will. Now, how will Nigeria trust you? And how will they trust them? It takes track record, what you've never done in the past.
One thing that we must be grateful for is that under Dr. Bukola Saraki, the 8th Senate stood up to the failures of the Nigerian, of the executive. We must be grateful for that. I'll give you another, how we're going to repay that. Show us documents, show us a plan from taking the debt to repaying the debt. Show us a plan. And on 11 occasions, the executive refused to do so.
If you lose soup, you're gone. There are a lot of things to be hopeless about. But Awolowo taught us. He says, it's not life that matters, but the courage that you bring into it. So this country, like he said, when whether somebody is blind, whether you like Boa Mariwa or you don't like him, the truth was that when he has taken over now, we've seen an improved NDLA. It was like the late Mrs. the NAFDAC woman when she took over. So when she still started, there is a lie, it's a flash in the pan. But no, after she's gone, we didn't hear NAFDAC again like that. So there are still good people. And before even this Kyari that fell, busting this crime, busting that crime, although anybody with any fair sense of introspection wonder there's something wrong with this call. To publicity, he would go and do an operation.
All and not some. I mean, our leaders can't keep picking and choosing the laws that they want to obey and the ones that they want to discard. I look forward to a time when accountability will be the watchword of Nigeria's leaders. Maybe then, just maybe then, Nigeria can truly work. The Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Matthew Kuka, has decried the state of the country and urged for a change in the system. He touched on issues such as the emigration of Nigerians to other countries, electricity, basic amenities. The bishop also noted that unity has to be based on facts and not just to be used as a word. The bishop also urged religious leaders to stop appeasing politicians with public endorsements. He added that governments must be open to representation based on nationality and not ethnicity to build a society of mutual trust where diversity is well manifested. He also noted that the youths should be invested in changing.
Gold fuels Africa's largest economy, where the lines between wealth and poverty has never been thinner. Conflicts, poverty, insecurity, and environmental challenges daily confront the region. How can the Niger Delta story be changed for the better?
Join Mamode Akuga at 9 p.m. every Friday evening on PlusTvAfrica as he probes deep in search of solutions.
Inside the Niger Delta with Mamode Akuga, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
Businesses in Africa can be very challenging. In Nigeria, it is particularly intimidating, and successful builders have learned how to navigate a hostile environment to unlock opportunities.
It's still Plus Politics, and we're being joined by Reverend Joseph Hayab. Reverend, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Good evening.
Good evening. So, yes, looking at the all of the points that the bishop has, marshaled, he's talked about the young, asserting their position that they're hearing to someone, and the person was hoping that Mr. President will use the last few months that he has in office to effect some positive change. How do we get the president's attention on these matters that the bishop has spoken about?
Only suffocated. People are in pain. People are passing through difficulties. Things have really never changed. The challenge we have today is that, as I've always said, our leaders feel that they can govern us by rhetoric, but to know that it is their time, not that they shall grow. We've heard about the young shall grow many years ago in Nigeria. Some of these leaders today were leaders even when they were in their prime age. But even in this old age, they still want to remain the same leaders. So what about the children they get back to? What about their grandchildren? What about the other young children? When will we give them opportunity? I'm not actually advocating that leadership should be given completely to young ones.
Yeah, because I was about to ask if the young people are ready.
Display their skills and begin to show their capability.
Because I was going to ask that, how ready are young people? And I'm not in any way trying to...
The error of one young man should not determine the complete 99% of other young people. So there are many young people in Nigeria who have skills, who have leadership ability, who are actually showing that leadership in the small area of their influence. Why don't we give them opportunity to go higher? You see, we are completely even dampening the morale of young people, making it look as if you're a young man, you cannot be anything, you cannot lead, you cannot contribute to the discussion, you cannot contribute to every decision making. So we're not encouraging them to move on. The young people need to be frustration. You hear them saying things that if you don't understand where they're coming from, you may judge them wrongly. Some of them have actually gone to school, they know the pressure they went through, getting money to pay school fees, and after school, there is nothing to offer. So sometimes when you see them reacting, they are only reacting to the situation. Give them the opportunity and you will see them excel because they are already doing it in many fields. Okay. The few ones that are doing it, have we even called them to say, okay, since we are excelling here, come and prove it in the nation's stage. We have not done that. So I don't go with people who think that young men are not right. They are right. Many of them are ready. They just need opportunity. But I'm also believing that we cannot say completely everything should be given to the young ones, but there will be a mix of young and old so that they will be learning through the process, growing through the process and becoming better. When you go out of the shore of this country, you will see how young people are learning to take responsibility and become patriotic, independent, and protecting their country. Not necessarily with God. Why are we allowing our children to only go into Yahoo?
Talking about that, we're always very quick to put all our problems at the feet of the presidency or the president or the leader of the country. But then we fail to also push responsibilities on our local government chairmen, on our members of the State House of Assemblies, even the governors. We're always calling on the president, whether it be an Obasanjo or a Yaradua or a Goodluck Jonathan. We're always calling on the president. We seem to forget that the governors are the ones who are saddled with the responsibility of making sure our state governors, because
they are wrong and now they need to adjust. Just as we do today, they will just come to the State House of Assembly for environment or some procedures, just for paper. But the real money is not with them. So sometimes when you demand too much from them, you realize that their hands are tied. So I do know this a lot about many local governments. And I know it's not only in Kaduna State, in many local governments. Look, in many local governments in Nigeria. But you see, the governors have a responsibility and they are not living it and they are now blaming the president. But we have, as Nigerians, we must raise questions. Questions to the governor, questions to the president, and questions to the local government chairman, because we do all elected all of them. So there is no one that is being spared, but it all depends on the issue we're talking. When you talk about security, you have to look at the presidency because he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. When you look at the issue of construction of roads at state level, then you talk about the governor and other things that he's supposed to do. When you look at them, so there are so many funny things going on in Nigeria, and that's why I started by commending Kuka for always coming out to speak to power and speaking on the need for things to change so that Nigerians will be proud of this country. This country must not remain this way. We've suffered too long. We cried that it was military regime. Now we are in a democracy, but it seems we are even worse than a military dictatorship.
Finally, before we go, Bishop Kuka made a point which is very, very important. She said, whether we call it restructuring, rotation, zoning, or whatever English name we want to give it, we know that something must happen. We need to disrupt this system because it is not working for the other 90% of many Nigerians. We need to bend the arc before the campaign season.
We don't act in accordance with the time. That's why Bishop Kuka is saying that instead, we must just do something. And what we need to do is, number one, our leaders must begin to treat and act sincerely, speak and act sincerely. Another day, the president will tell you that there's no even way that we can have state police. So everything government is saying, there is no sincerity, there's no commitment to doing it. But the reality is that Nigeria is not moving forward.
So what can we do? Whether we call it whatever name, can we do tribe or religion before you get certain...
Well, Reverend Joseph Hayab, always a pleasure to have you here on the show. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, thank you all for being part of the conversation tonight, and that's it on Plus Politics. But before we go, I'm going to be leaving you with what Nigerians have to say about the 4th year of Leah Sharibu's captivity. And of course, a lot of people had something to say about it.
That was how they were silent during the Chibok and the Dapchi girls, until we start seeing rescues and negotiations with the captors and the eventual release of the girls. But on Leah Shaibu, well, the silence has been loud enough, and I believe it's time for them to do something about her.
Where minors are kidnapped and nothing is done about it, and we go about our daily activities as if there's
a lot of this unevenness, disparity and discrimination, There's this divide of the rich and the poor, if you don't have influence, if you don't have connections, a lot of things, that are basic will somehow become luxury. So the reason